Hello, I'm Scott Wrighton. I serve as Decatur City Manager, and it's my pleasure every week to bring you updates about COVID and some of the other activities of the City Council and your city government. Although the COVID numbers are finally starting to go in the right direction, this pandemic is far from over. Since last week, there have already been 86 new cases of COVID-19 reported here in Macon County. The positivity rate for Illinois Region 6, that's our region that includes Macon County, is 2.5%, and the positivity rate for Macon County is 3.1%. Now, both of these rates have dropped slightly since last week, but the drop has been ever so slight, and they really need to go lower. As of this week, 31% of Macon County's population is fully vaccinated, and others have antibodies from having contracted COVID-19, but still, this means that only a little more than 1/3 of the county's population is protected, and that falls below the fully protected rates of our sister counties here in central Illinois. Getting the vaccine remains your best strategy for not getting infected and for returning our community to some semblance of normalcy. The local health department has thousands, literally thousands of doses of the COVID vaccine on its shelves, and they are not receiving any more shipments from the state of Illinois because there is no local demand for the existing supplies. The vaccine is still free, and there is very little wait time. It's been widely reported in the media that the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC for short, has said that it is no longer necessary to wear your masks indoors or outdoors if you have been fully vaccinated. The state of Illinois, however, is not completely in sync with this recommendation. Now, it might be useful at this point to stop for just a second and understand that the CDC does not have broad governmental powers. Many of the CDC's recommendations are subsequently adopted by the federal, state, and local governments, but just because the CDC issues guidelines does not make them automatically the law of the land in our federal structure. For example, the CDC never had the authority to put a nationwide halt to evictions, even though they tried to do that, and a federal court recently ruled that the CDC's no eviction mandates were not valid. However, governors and state governments do have broad authority to enact and enforce these rules, and they often do so on the recommendation of the CDC, including bans on evictions, which the governor has kept in place here in Illinois. Governor Pritzker's recent COVID orders acknowledge the recommendations of the CDC, the recent ones about not having to wear masks if you have been fully vaccinated. But the governor's orders also still allow more stringent requirements regarding masks and social distancing and so forth in restaurants and in certain other categories of business, which means there's going to be some confusion ahead, at least for another month or so before we get to phase 5. The simplest way, I think, to navigate the confusion created by the variance between the governor's orders and the CDC's recommendations is simply to acknowledge and to understand that some locations, some businesses, certain meeting environments are still going to have special rules that maybe go beyond and are somewhat more stringent than the CDC, at least until we reach phase 5. For the city's part, we are returning to normal scheduling in June. Now, city offices have been open for many months with certain restrictions, but some of our staff are here or some of them are remote, and so we're returning to some form of normal scheduling in June, but with certain public health requirements still in place. The City Council and many of our city boards and commissions will be back in council chambers in June as well, albeit with some safety protocols still in place. I also anticipate that the City Council will discuss changes to the mask ordinance sometime in June, and that they will probably make some relaxation to the rules. I don't know exactly what those will be yet. The changes that they will likely make will reflect some of the CDC's recommendations and their guidelines, but they will also be pegged to the Illinois Department of Public Health's rules, and that means that as the state loosens up, so will our ordinances, and that change will be largely automatic. I truly believe that we can get back most of the way to normal this summer, but with a few precautions that not only serve to protect public health, but also provide some form of liability shield for, let's face it, all the people who will decide this year and next to sue somebody because they got COVID. So let me stop talking about COVID and talk about some other things that are going on here at the city. At its last meeting, the mayor and council took action to authorize additional demolitions of more than a dozen derelict and abandoned structures, mostly single-family homes. The numbers of demolitions that the city has done has increased significantly over the last 2 years because the city council understands that when there is a surplus of available housing stock, that inventory needs to be reduced by taking out the worst and the most dilapidated of those structures until the number that remains gets closer to what the actual market demand is for housing. To make sure that we keep doing this, the council recently dedicated a portion of its one-time cures and cares relief funding to demolition and revitalization in excess of $1 million. So this will enable us to keep on going and get closer to bringing down the number of structures and as the demand for housing increases. Now, some folks have said, and I've heard this, that, well, why do you keep tearing down these structures when the city doesn't have a clear idea of what's going to go back in their place? Well, the simple reality is that it is not possible to work with a developer, to work with somebody who might have a repurposing of a property until it is cleared not only of a derelict structure, but also have its title cleared. And then and only then have we been able to have meaningful discussions with developers and other persons who might repurpose some of these properties. So it has to begin with demolition. The City Council at its last meeting also took action to approve a new contract with Midwest Fiber. That's the local company here in Decatur that processes the recyclables that you all set out at curbside and then sells them into the recycling market. For many years, the cost of that recycling, of that processing of the recycling, the cost of that exceeded the amount of money that they got by selling it back into the marketplace. So as a result, later this year, there will likely be a small adjustment to the recycling charge that appears on most people's bills. It's about $2.15 a month, and so there could be a slight change in the range of 25 or 30 cents as we try to figure out how to make sure that the cost that we charge for recycling is reflected in the fact that the markets continue to vary as to what those costs are. At the same time, the City Council will need to be evaluating some changes to the garbage and recycling ordinances as it concerns to general collection of refuse that goes to the landfill. As many of you know, nationwide, Waste Management Company is taking over all of the local operations of Advanced, essentially being merged, and the new company will all be Waste Management. When that is accomplished, close to 2/3 of the districts for garbage collection here in Decatur will be the responsibility of that merged company. We've had an increase in the number of garbage complaints from residences lately, and we think that it is partly affected by that merger between Waste Management and Advanced, and also some changes in personnel, but it's also reflective of the fact that it's been close to 5 years since the City Council made some revisions to that ordinance. So we'll be talking with all of the haulers, trying to understand how we can improve the service, reduce some of those complaints as we move forward to the next phase of garbage in our city. These decisions, like many others, benefit from the input that you provide, both formally at City Council meetings and informally through our website and through emails, and we appreciate all of them. It's my pleasure to serve as your city manager and to organize those things, and to bring you these weekly updates about what's going on in your city government. And I look forward to our future discussions. Thanks.